Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts. With the 1970, don't call it a Chrysler Imperial, it's an Imperial. You got to remember that the Imperial brand was Chrysler's crown from 1954 through 1970. Imperial was to Chrysler what Cadillac is to Buick and Pontiac and Olds, and what Lincoln is to Mercury. It was definitely the crown on Chrysler Corporation's head. So 1970 was the final year for Imperial as a standalone division. For 1971, it became the Chrysler Imperial and was made through 1975 when the OPEC fuel economy hassle was in full swing. The Imperial was dropped until 1981 when it came back as that M-body two-door coupe, which made it through 81, 3, and 4. But again, the final year right here for an Imperial. Don't call it a Chrysler Imperial, but a lot of things about these were very unique, and this is not a Chrysler New Yorker. It actually has a longer wheelbase and lots of other weird things. Let's dig in. Of course, up front, every Imperial in 1970 has the 440. 1971, the 400 was available. In 1972, the 360 became a possibility in Imperials. But with that said, 1970, 440 and nothing else. And of course, it's gone. But yeah, this would have been the 350 horsepower 440 single exhaust, because you remember, Cadillac, in fact, their last dual exhaust passenger car was 1960. Through the 60s and 70s, Cadillacs were strictly single exhaust, and so too were the vast majority of Imperials. The point is, the Imperial is not a Hemi-Cuda. You don't want to have the dual exhaust burble. You don't want that noise in the car. Instead, the Imperial came with a big single exhaust track with decent exhaust flow, but again, a quiet muffler. You didn't want to hear the engine inside the car. So although it was a 440, to move this 4,300-pound car, it didn't have dual exhaust, but it still could be hot rodded, and that's probably where this one went. This one does have the optional cruise control, and of course the power booster for the dual circuit brakes. This would have had disc brakes up front. We'll see if they're there or not. Massive radiator, 26-inch wide. Hemi spec, I mean no Hemis in Imperials, but this is basically a 26-incher, same thing found in Hemi Roadrunners, etc. And the interesting thing too is this is the second generation, the second year, 1970, for the fuselage styling cycle. What's the fuselage? Well, the side of the body has sort of an outward flow to it. And again, 69 onward, replacing sort of the concave stuff from 1968. But something new for 69 and in its second year for 1970 is hideaway headlights. Now we know that in 1965 and 66, the Imperial did have a glass panel in front of the headlight. Didn't move, so we can't really call that a hideaway light. But 1969 and 70, of course, debuted Imperial's first ever hideaway lights. We see right here, here's the little door, goes up and down. And basically there's an electric motor right here that controls and actuates both of these rods that open the doors. Now you got to remember that hideaway headlights were seen on various other cars, the Eldorado from Cadillac, variety of other cars. But in Imperial land, 1969 was the first year that Imperial got hideaway headlights, kind of late. Now here's the thing, this sticker right here tells a little story. And we can see here, it says, to manually open headlamp doors, disconnect all wires to headlamps, door motor, and then turn the knob. There's a little knob under here to basically, yeah, on the bottom of the motor, where is that thing? But you basically turn a knob which actuates the headlight doors. So Chrysler wasn't 100% secure in the reliability of these doors. And in fact, the 1970 Dodge Charger had a similar deal when it went to electric door flappers on the 70 Charger. So again, if you get in your Imperial at night, you turn the lights on, they're too dark, well, you just crank the knob. Some light does come through these. They're definitely, you can see that light could go through. These are not blocked, but with that said, it wouldn't be a lot, so you probably would want to retract those if the motor was to fail. Now getting back to those disc brakes, this one here has been harvested, no front discs, but at the same point in time, lesser Chryslers still had drum brakes up front, the Newports, etc. You paid extra for disc, but Imperial's standard front disc brakes. And again, these are semi-unitized construction cars. From the firewall back, it's a one-piece tub, but the front subframe bolts on these things here, kind of like a full-size Chrysler C body. Now this one is a hardtop. There were sedans and hardtops in 70, 71. No more convertibles in Imperial land after 68, so they were all going to be 2 or 4 doors. This one here is a hardtop. We can see a large interior leather gut in this one here, sort of a gold cow. I'm not sure where they grew those things, but it looks cool. Gold hide. Of course, it's dyed. We know better than that. The tape deck in the dashboard, the thumb wheel radio, that rectangular structure, that's where your 8-track tape would go in. Not cassettes, but 8 tracks. Maybe some Led Zeppelin or some Who or some cool old-time music would be played in that thing. Now, something kind of interesting on this one that we see, in the 60s, Detroit was getting away from vent windows, these things right here. They were considered old school, kind of a throwback, like the 67 Camaro had them, the 68 Camaro did not have them. Well, in Imperial land and Chrysler land, standard equipment was no vent window. Believe it or not, you paid extra for the vent window. Don't believe me? Check this out. This is the American Car Prices Guide here for 1970, all the new vehicles for 70, all the price data inside. And in here, we can see on the left-hand side, Imperial standard equipment for 350 horse. It says dual concealed headlamps, but on P33 vent windows, there it is right there, $73.85, the vent windows P33. So you paid extra, not available on the hardtop because they were strictly the ventless, but again, $73.85. And of course, D91 Sure Grip was possible for 56 bucks. I'll take that over the vent windows any day. But the beauty of the vent windows was this. If you turn this little knob right here, we'll come around to here, and here's this circular knob. Now, the windows were always power on all Imperials, no problem with that. But this thing here, you turn that, and the little vent window opens. So if you're eating beans or something unfortunate should happen, you can blow it right out of the car. Look at the articulation. I think it goes way around more than you would have on a normal vent window. But again, turn that. And this again was 75 bucks extra. You paid extra for the exhaust emissions extraction system, if you will. But I love these things. The good thing is you can direct air right on yourself, whereas putting the window down, it's not quite as good. So old school, you paid extra for that. Now this one here is a LeBaron. And something we can see on this is underneath the vinyl top, here is the seam, the little surgery scars where the roof is welded on, and here's some of the old filler. Now on cars with vinyl tops, this is a plastic filler. Right here, it's Bondo, basically, skimmed on, not too thick, but that hides the seam, and then the vinyl does the job of getting rid of it. If you ordered your Imperial without vinyl, this would be finished in lead, which would be far less visible. In other words, when the vinyl top is on there, they could get away without nearly as much handwork, and the plastic was protected by the vinyl so it wouldn't rot or bubble, whereas on a non-vinyl car, that was going to be lead. But something else seen here, with that vinyl top allowed them to hide the rear window plug. Take a peek at this thing here. This is a fiberglass insert right here that goes into the standard Newport rear window opening to give it the more exclusive small glass. But I'm not being fooled by this, are you? There it is right there, these screws, this thing bolts in. It's a fiberglass plug, kind of like the Charger Daytona, to be honest with you, and the Plymouth Superbird, which had a smaller rear window. But in this case, it was all about sort of an exclusive vibe, smaller window, but with the same roof panel as a Chrysler Newport. Now you know. And again, with the vinyl top, who's gonna know? So anyway, there's that. And on this one here, got to remember too that 1970, the Imperial was not a Chrysler, even to the rear axle and suspension. When you see this in the center right here, those two little dimples, that thing and that thing, that tells you it's an 8 3/4, but it's out of an Imperial. It's not from a Mopar that you can use. The reason that it's different, the bolt pattern. It's a 5-on-5. You don't believe it? Check this out. This is the front spindle from a 1970 Chrysler Newport. Same basic car, but this is the C-body. This is an Imperial wheel. Looks like a Chrysler rim, right? Well, check this out. This bolt pattern right here, that's 5-on-4.5. This is 5-on-5, but it doesn't look it. You try to use the Imperial wheel on your Chrysler, and here's what's going to happen to you. See that? It ain't going to go, because the Imperial had a 5-on-5, whereas lesser Chrysler New Yorkers, Newports had a 5-on-4.5. So even the wheels were different and weird on Imperials versus their smaller Chrysler New Yorker siblings. Coming to the back, massive trunk lid on these things. And again, here's the single exhaust. Again, duals were sometimes available, the TNT engine, but this is the single pipe coming out of the 440 right there. And again, pretty quiet. It would have had a big high flow muffler. And inside the trunk, yeah, huge, still has the original fawn gold metallic Always the underside of the trunk survives the longest and bestest. And on Imperials, a lot of the inner structures were covered with modesty panels like this plastic thing right here, whereas on a Newport you would not have that. But basically the idea being that people loading their leather baggage and luggage into their Imperial didn't want to scuff it. So they had these soft touch surfaces, including even down here, this stuff would not be found on a lesser Chrysler Newport or a New Yorker. But again, just to give it a little better eye appeal. Coming around to the other side, this car was sold out of Clark Chrysler Plymouth in Lawrence, Massachusetts, way back when. And the price on this thing new was $6,040, which was $450 less than a Lincoln or $600 less than a Cadillac. And sadly, Cadillac outsold Lincoln and Imperial combined. And in fact, Imperial might have sold 20,000 cars in 1970, not a lot compared to 120,000 Cadillacs roughly. So sadly, the Imperial was not a big money maker for Chrysler. Inside here, once again, we have the power windows for everything. The door locks are power, the little wood grain, everything here. The little hideaway part right here. What's the goodies inside here? It's empty, nothing going on, but all kinds of hidden places to put stuff. And once again, the little manual vent window still working. One of the few things in this car that still works. And getting back to 1970 being the final year for the Imperial, this is a 1972 Chrysler full-line catalog. And those here, Imperials included with New Yorker, New Yorker Brougham, etc. So it's true that 1970 final year, and here it is. The Imperial's listed first, of course, ahead of the other ones. You can see right here, here's the Imperial right here. It's got a longer wheelbase, 127 inches versus 124 for like a New Yorker. So the Imperial is different in many ways, including the wheels, the brakes, etc. And again, standard equipment on a 440. There it is right there, and power brakes, front disc. And it says here, all Imperials road tested before shipping to assure greater customer satisfaction. So again, 1972 right here. By 1976, Imperial would be gone. But that's the story of how a Imperial is not a Chrysler New Yorker. They're still quite different in the final year, 1970. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. Give us a like, a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and be sure to ring the bell so you're aware of when the next video hits, which is tomorrow morning.